We are live.
This is 2OF Entertainment.
Hey, happy 2025.
Yeah,
Wow.
brand new
January
year.
2nd.
This
Brand new year.
brand
Who
new year.
knew?
We'll start all over. Get rid of all that garbage that we did last year and just move on to new stuff. Right?
And today you have a new stuff. You have an ice carver, I think, or a snow
Yeah.
builder. I'm not sure. I looked at the pictures and she's fascinating. So,
Yeah. Well, Patricia Leguen is an international snow carver, ice carver, and sand carver. Also
wow.
works a little bit in some fireworks and doing fire sculpture as well. So Patricia is initially from France
Okay.
and immigrated to Canada, and
Well, it's the same thing, Paul. In Quebec,
that's
you
kind
won't
of
know the
over.
difference.
Yeah, he's been to Quebec a number of times,
There you
but
go.
she lives in Western Canada, and she's been working in sculpture for 40 years. So we're going to talk
Wow.
about why produce sculpture that disappears, it melts, and it does all this kind of stuff. And she's done, I think, over 120 competitions around the world, China,
Wow.
Alaska, all the way down to some of the warm countries where they work in sand. So I'm going to talk to her about, I don't know, the art of making like monumental sculpture, and I don't know where else to go. We'll just talk with her. It'll be.
I love it. I have no clue what to do with this thing.
I'm excited. Brand new year, brand new
Don't
conversation.
worry. Patricia, Happy New Year. How you doing?
I'm good. Happy New Year to everyone who's
Yeah.
listening.
And while they're
Yeah,
watching, they watch. They don't listen. They watch. It's a very
they
visual show. So we're going to expect you during the show to build a sandcastle. So I'm just saying. So there you
Not
go,
right now in
guys. I'm at.
Saskatoon.
Is that
The
all right?
gonna
She'll build
cover
a.
something.
She'll build a snowman, and we're going to play the music from Frozen. Do you want to build a snowman? Just kidding. Patricia, have a wonderful interview. I'll see you at the end. Paul, she's all yours.
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Welcome, Patricia. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Well, I've wanted to have this one a long time. We've been doing the show. This is our third season now. So, and we've had sculptors on before, but you do really different sculpture, and I say different. It's mostly because of the medium. The media is different than, say, stone and wood and plastics and all the other things that sculptors can make. More tangible pieces. Yours is tangible but temporary, and I really want to talk to you about, a little bit of your journey. I think we'll start there. Just where you came from and why you came to Canada. Can you tell us a little bit of your background?
Okay, it's a long story.
Well, let's just take little snippets
just
of it.
give you some
Yeah,
highlights.
yeah.
I came to Saskatoon for the very first time in 1979 from my university in Nantes in France. And I was on an exchange program with my university teaching French at the U of S. And I was offered to take free classes at the university. And I always wanted to be an artist on top of studying languages and so on. So I took my first studio classes, sculpture, printmaking, painting, art history, and German at the time.
Okay.
And that's where I discovered sculpting.
Yeah. No, that's I think we're always trying to interesting because you always have other side careers. It's really hard, especially with the kind of sculpture you do, to make a living doing snow sculpture and that. They don't pay real well. Am I correct there? It's not
Well, there's not really any money to be made in snow sculpting.
Yeah.
A bit more in ice carving if you do commercial work, which I don't want to do. I prefer to do my own sculptures.
Right.
And I never do the same thing twice. A lot of the commercial ice carvers, do the same thing over and over again. Same with the, the chainsaw carvers. They always do bears and this and that. I'm not interested in that. I prefer to do my own designs and monumental. So snow was a amazing discovery because in the winter of 1979, we went to the big snow dump by the Mendel Art Gallery in Saskatoon with a few of the sculptor students. And we built a giant sculpture, 20 feet tall, over 30 feet across, of a group of people dancing, giant figures dancing. And then we put all the Christmas trees in the middle and burnt them. So it was like a giant dance around the Christmas trees. And it was amazing. Even though it was minus 35, I just loved it. And I didn't really know about any competitions at the time. I only found out in 1991 that there was a national competition in Quebec City. And I went, and the first year I won third place. And then I was hooked. And went back in 92, didn't win. Went back in 93 and won first place in Artist Choice. And then got into the international circuit after that.
So how does that work? Like like you said, international circuit, getting into a circuit. How do you like get invited to those things?
Well,
Like,
first you have to win a national competition to be invited. And so that's what I did. But the competition in Quebec City that I attended 5 times does not exist anymore. Now there's a lot of festivals, commercial projects in ice, snow, and sand around the world. So I also, when I was starting snow sculpting, I remember the very first time I met a team from the Magdalen Islands, north of Prince Edward Island, and they told me about sand sculpting, and I had no idea. And I was like, well, yeah, maybe someday I'll get to that. And then I ended up starting sand sculpting in 1995 when some guy I knew who was in my sculpture class back in 79 was doing a sand sculpture project in Saskatoon for a big mall. And then I helped, and then I went to the World Championship after that. 15 years in a row in Harrison Hot Springs, British Columbia, just outside of Vancouver. And I also started ice carving in 1995 when I was just walking downtown and I saw some guy carving ice in front of the Radisson Hotel. So I asked him if he was a sculptor, and he said, no, I'm the chef. And I'm like, oh, I want to try that. So he said, well, come on the weekend, we'll do a piece for the buffet. And then I did a couple, and then I went to the World Championship the following year and won second place. So
you just jump right in, don't you? With both feet.
Yeah, well, it's fun.
Yeah.
And it's fun to do all three, snow, ice, and sand, because they're all natural elements that you can reuse over and over again. And I also started doing fire sculptures, because when I went to China, Harbin, China, the big ice and snow festival in Manchuria in 1999, I met a team from France and a team from Sweden, and we were sharing photos at the time because there was no internet, no nothing. And the French showed some photos of some sculptures on fire, and the Swedish too. And I was like, whoa, I want to try that. and then the French captain said, well, there's a competition in Normandy on a pebble beach in the summer. So the Swedish team went in 2000, and then I went in 2001.
Yeah.
So that's how it started. But it's a bit more complicated with fire sculptures, because I did a one in Saskatoon, and I had to have the fire department around, and they wanted to put out the fire right away. And I'm like, we spent all day building the sculpture with, I had a few assistants, and then we set it on fire when it was pitch dark, and it burns for about an hour, and then all that's left is just wire. The twine burns, the wood burns, and the hay. That's what you use. Yeah.
I'm going to get Stephen to start our first image up, and we can start going through some.
Okay, sure.
So this just is your introduction. You talk about your work is ephemeral.
Yes, it is.
And I think artists just think about using different substrates to do what they do. You know, a lot of us are painters and things, but you can draw with a piece of charcoal. You don't, like from a fire, you don't need to have man-made charcoal. You can make your own. And I think you're working with natural elements a lot of times. So, um,
I do everything myself. I even make my own tools.
okay.
At the beginning, I made my own tools, and for snow sculpting, it's very like it's all hand tools. You're
Yeah.
not allowed to use any chainsaws or anything. For sand sculpting, it's mostly flexible blades, shovels, of course, to rough out, and then just flexible blades. Yeah, trowels and such.
Yeah. So as the text says, this is a large sculpture here in Germany.
Yes, this was in Duisburg in Germany, not far from Dusseldorf in 2017. We were a team of 15 sculptors, and I was the only Canadian invited, and it was to beat the Guinness World Record for the tallest sandcastle. So what they mean by sandcastle is not just architecture. Only 50% of the sculpture has to be architecture, and the rest can be figures and scenes and stuff. So we had to work all the way around, and when we finished, the sand was packed with machines, so
Okay.
it was really, really hard. And then we had to go up with a crane, and then the guys who started at the top had to wear like a harness and everything for because it was about 20 meters high,
Yeah.
and it was 125 meters around. So there was a lot of
Yeah,
sand to carve. Yeah.
yeah. And I think we talk about that a little bit later on, the endurance that it takes to make something this big. So this is the mold, basically the
Well,
forms for
we
it.
call them plywood forms, and
Plywood
then
form.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they're reinforced with some metal wires around so it doesn't explode because it's a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And you basically start from the top, remove the first form, and work your way down. So you
Oh, you
can
were
stand on the next ledge, which is usually the size of your feet or 1 foot, so you can walk around.
okay.
And then you have to remove the sand as you go down. So it's a lot of sand to remove. You have to picture the sculpture inside of the forms, so to
Right.
speak.
We're going to go to the next slide in a minute. I'm just
Yeah.
sort of just like looking at this piece here. I mean, it's a piece of architecture in itself, you know, just with the forms on it. You
A
can get a
pyramid.
feeling
Yeah.
how big this is with the scale with the sculptors in the foreground.
Yeah.
It's
Well, these were the technical, they weren't the sculptors.
Oh,
They
they
were
were the
the technical crew. They built the forms
Oh,
and packed the sand. So it
well,
took about a week.
a
Yeah.
week.
It's
That's what I was gonna ask.
well, it's a big project. And
It's
it was sand from a quarry because it was in a huge park in Duisburg, an old factory or something.
What do
So
they use the sand for after it's done? Do they spread it around there, or was it just
oh,
taken?
you can reuse the sand and do whatever. They had to destroy the sculpture afterwards. So I even talked to the crew that was there to destroy it after we were done because it can be dangerous if anybody climbs up and
Yeah.
and then something breaks because it's packed with water and tempered really hard. So it takes a long time for the water to go all the way down. And then when it dries, it turns into sandstone and it's super hard. And you need like a sledgehammer, basically,
Oh,
to
really?
break. Oh, yeah. Or a big, like a big machine to just
Yeah. So I
knock
think
off the top.
a lot of us have made sand castles and such on the beach and things, and there's water, but they destroy very quickly. Like the
Well,
sand.
because people do it the wrong way. Instead of packing the sand in a form, like
Mhm.
you would take a bucket, you cut the bottom off the bucket, and you pack the sand inside with the water and and pack it with your hands,
Yeah.
tap, and
Then lift the
remove
bucket
the
up.
bucket. You have a solid form. But people just do the other way around. They fill up a bucket with sand and they dump it, so it doesn't hold because there's no the sand doesn't stick to the water,
Yeah.
and the
And
water doesn't stick to the sand. So
there's different types of sand as well. Some
yeah, but if you don't pack the sand properly, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So,
So this one looks very ornate. I mean,
well,
there's
that's the finished
yeah,
product. Yeah.
it's a majestic city of some kind. So is there a theme that you all have to work to?
No, we were given photocopies of different things to do. And so
Oh,
this is the whole team of sculptors. I'm standing on the left side and with the green top. And
okay.
then the organizer who's in the very front with his arms crossed, a German guy. And then it was mostly architecture, so you have to do a lot of architecture, as you can see.
Yeah,
And then it has to be large, impressive scenes, so you can see it from a distance. You
right.
can't do like tiny little things when it's 20 meters. Well, this one was about 17 meters high finished. So you need to see it very, very big. So someone has to stand back quite a ways and say, okay, no, that's too small, this and that,
Okay.
So you really have to enlarge everything so it looks good
Right.
from a distance, because
So
that's what people see at first. They
so you
come
work
from a distance and yeah.
so you work from images, not a maquette or anything. There's
No,
no
well, this was huge. I mean, it was 125 meters across, almost 17 meters high.
yeah,
So and then 15 of us who have all different backgrounds. Some prefer to do architecture,
yeah,
some prefer to do figurative work. So it was a mix of everything. Yeah.
yeah,
So this was the actual front of the sculpture,
yeah.
but there were other scenes all the way around.
Yeah, I can imagine you just have to. It's hard to show sculpture. That's part of the problem. You can't see all the sides at one
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
right? You almost need a video to kind of walk around it. But
Yeah.
we're just working with
Or
still.
people, when they come and see, they walk around and they're like, wow, how did you do that? And then the ones who come every day, they see the progress and they're like, oh, wow, I wasn't there yesterday. And, so it was,
How are the crowds at this?
oh, they're totally amazed. Like they
Yeah,
have, like when they see it done, actually see it done, it's like a whole different feeling. When people see something totally finished, they're like, well,
yeah,
they say, oh, I like it, I don't, but they have no clue how it's done. So
yeah.
that's what one thing about competitions. There's people who come every day,
Mhm.
and then they see from start to finish, and they really appreciate the physical work that it takes, because it's not just carving. It's a lot of physical work,
I was
shoveling,
going to
and
talk to you about that. It's like, what do you do to train for this? Like, what kind of is there a
I
diet? Is there
I
what do you do
I
daily to
exercise.
exercise? Yeah.
And
Well,
it's also good exercise, because I'm shoveling and shoveling all the time. I have arthritis in my right shoulder from too many years of snow shoveling and sand
how long have you
sculpting.
been doing sculpture?
Well, I started in
Over
1979, so
oh,
over
over
40 years.
over
Yeah,
40 years. So
yeah,
it
and I'm
does.
still in good shape, and I still work hard, and yeah,
I think it's understanding that you to do this. It's as you get older, you feel it. You go
Mhm.
with the endurance
But
that you need to
when
keep
you're
going.
younger too, it's like I remember at the World Championship in Harrison Hot Springs, the first day at a competition, you have to pack the sand yourself. You have to do everything yourself.
Oh boy.
You don't have the forms already like this one.
Yeah.
Uh, and the first day is gruesome for anyone. Like it doesn't matter how old you are, because you shovel so much sand, and then you have to pour water, so buckets and buckets. You have to do everything by hand, and
Yeah.
then you have to use a temper, a metal temper. And I remember the very first time I figured, oh well, if I use a bigger temper, it's going to be quicker. But I got tendonitis in both wrists
Yeah.
from pounding.
Yeah.
So I quit. I used a smaller one after
Yeah.
that. You
Yeah.
you just learn.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you just hopefully take care of yourself because if you don't, you won't make it through to the end of the competition.
Oh
You just
no, we all do, but it's just the first day is the worst, because it's packing, shoveling, pouring water, and then after that you start carving and you forget about the
it's
first day.
good to have a team. It's good to have a team of people that are taking on the different tasks.
Well, sometimes it's
Mm.
solo. Like at the World Championship, I did the solo events. I did the solo and then the team, like back to back. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So we just jumped from real beautiful warm weather into cold weather here. We just
Yeah, and this was in 2010, or I can't even remember. I've done too many, and that's why I
I'm
keep
not
track.
surprised you're gonna remember as many as you do.
I keep track in my resume. I write down as soon as I finish the competition, I write down all the details because
Yeah,
I forget. And I remember one time I was at a CARFAC meeting, and some artist asked me how many competitions I'd done, and I'm like, oh, I never counted. And then at that time I'd done 52, I think. So I started writing down after that. And
start numbering
so
them. Yeah.
sometimes I get mixed up in the dates. But this one was a very special one because it was in Cortina d'Ampezzo in the Dolomites in Italy, in northern Italy. It's a big ski resort. They had the Olympics there years ago in the 50s, and it's like the Whistler of Italy. And the snow was beautiful, and it was teams of two. And I asked this friend of mine from Amsterdam to team up with me. She's a sand sculptor, and I said, "Well, you have to try snow sculpting." So it's a bit more difficult for sand sculptors to switch to snow.
Okay.
It's a lot easier for snow sculptors to go into sand. Some don't want to do anything else than sand because you're usually in warm places.
Yeah.
But we had a great time, and we won first place too, so that was great.
Well,
Yeah.
we'll show
And
it.
there was a theme for this one, and it was skiing, speed, and movement.
So this is the image that came out of that block that you were
Yep.
standing on working on. Yeah.
Yep.
No,
And then we were right in front of the church. It's a beautiful little town. And then we did a snowboarder just demultiplying in space. Yeah.
oh, okay.
Coming
So
out of the wall.
did you carve both sides of the piece or just the front?
No, it's a wall in the back, a thin wall, and then the figure demultiplying 4 times. Yeah,
Yeah.
to show speed and movement and skiing.
And it does, the way the light hits this, it has that dark to light feeling. It does feel like it's actually moving,
Well,
There's
that's
repetition.
the great thing about snow. Once it's finished, you polish it with a 16 grit sandpaper, so it's
Okay.
almost like marble. And you want to show depth, so you have nice shadows. And it's a lot easier to photograph than ice carvings because it's all transparent. So you really want to have lots of light and shadows, lights and shadows
Yeah.
in a snow sculpture. So it's really striking when you see it, like the first impression you get. Yeah.
So how long did you carve on this one for?
Oh,
How
it's always 3 days.
3 days? That's
This one
what
was 3
really are.
days. Yeah, 2 people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of the snow sculpting competitions are 3 days, sometimes 3.5, sometimes 4. But 4 is, I find it way too long. Like, once you know what you're doing and you have your little model, your maquette, like, and then you have to take the weather into account because you never know if it's going to be a bit too warm or if it's too cold, it's not an issue. But if it gets warm, if it's above freezing, then the snow is compromised, and then it doesn't hold as well, and it can collapse and
Right.
break. So I always make sure that my design will fit no matter what the weather is, and that I don't want any collapses.
Yeah. So you come there pretty much with an idea what you want before you start, and together you decide how it's going to go about your team. Like,
Well, you have to submit a design, and your design is selected
okay.
first. Yeah, for all competitions.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
except sand, because in sand there's always collapses. So you always have to have a plan A, plan B, plan C, because
smaller.
there's
Yeah.
sometimes there's cracks and then the whole thing falls down like 2 hours before the end. So you still have to do something. So that's the only sand is the only medium where you don't have to. You can submit a sketch, but sometimes it might not be the one you finish with. You end up
Because
with-
of what if? Yeah.
because
That
if you don't put
happened.
if you don't put enough water, it's always the thing. The big joke is like, oh, not enough water. There's a crack, and
Well,
sometimes the whole thing falls in front of you, and it's heartbreaking.
yeah. Well, it's like
If
the
it's at
people.
the end of the competition, it's horrible. But if it's at the beginning, it's like, okay, plan B. And, yeah.
Well, the nice thing with this is anybody can do these if they really want to, in their backyard, even smaller.
Oh,
I
I
mean,
do.
that's what I really
Yeah.
like about this. You don't need like the sand could be used for their kids later on if they wanted to.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I do it in my backyard. I have 3 tons of sand in my backyard in my sandbox, and I have my deck where I have tons of snow, and I was going to carve something. I just got back from a 3-week holiday in the Caribbean, so I have so much snow on my deck. I'm like, okay, every winter I make a sculpture. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So for those ones, you create your own plywood form and then pack it. Is that
No, because that's heavy to carry. But I have plastic forms that
okay?
I use for sand and snow, just the same, and it's a lot easier because it's round.
Okay.
So I use C-clamps, and it's the plastic that's used inside swimming pools. So it's just a few millimeters thick,
Mhm.
and it bends, so you can make like a big round form, and then you use the C-clamps, and then you throw the snow, and then you use a temper, but you have to use a wooden one because you can't use metal because it sticks. So I have a big piece of wood with a handle, and then I just go up. So on my deck, I can go up to like 6, 8 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and then I
have
start from the top, and then.
I have a tamper I could gift to you. It's
Oh,
it's a
well, sure, anytime, like any.
it's a big wood one, and I have it hiding in the back, and I just bought
Oh
one.
well,
I was
I'd
doing.
gladly take it. Yeah.
Yeah, I had used. I think I used the handles off of a lawnmower for this
Yeah.
thing, but it was made out of a big 6x6, 4x6 piece of lumber.
Yeah,
But
because at competitions they use a giant like snowblower, like in Harbin. They
Mhm.
make the snow if there's not enough snow. There's always snow, but never know. And they just go, it's like constant
Yeah,
a flow of powdery snow, and then it just with the weight, because it's about 20-25 tons of snow, and
oh,
that block. Well, this one's a bigger block. This one is one of the biggest block at a competition in the French Alps. It's
mhm.
actually what is it? For 3.5 meters by 3.5 by 4.5 meters. Yeah, so it's a huge block, and it's teams of 3.
That's good. I
Yeah.
like the themes. Like you carry a lot of Canadian First Nations imagery
Yeah.
and
Well, I live in Saskatoon. I live in Saskatchewan, and I want to tell people about the place and the culture. And this one, for example, is based on the story of the white buffalo calf woman. And I asked permission from a Lakota elder in Saskatoon to use this story.
oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but
And it
yeah.
turned out really well, except that on the last day it was 0 Celsius,
Here.
and we couldn't carve right through the like underneath the legs
Okay.
because it was like mashed potatoes. It was
Mm,
no, it was horrible. It
yeah.
was like you could put your hand through it. I mean, so
Yeah.
sometimes you have to adapt. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's sad when that happens. It just there's that temperature is controlling everything. Yeah, the
Yeah,
weather.
and also on the bottom of the sculpture, you can see there's kind of like a darker line. There was a little bit of like oil or something when they
Oh,
dumped it, and I was not too happy because I like it when the snow is like really white. But it worked out okay because we had this giant like rock promontory under the bison, so it looked like rock. Yeah.
yeah. It's beautiful, Patricia. It's a beautiful piece.
Yeah, and this one was it was the highest one because we used the block sideways to carve to make it longer, and then we had a bit more snow at the top, so we kept it, and then we added each of the horns separately.
Yeah.
We went into the bobcat and then we had to dig a hole and then stick the horn, hold for a few minutes till it
Frozen.
held,
Yeah.
and use snice, which is a mix of snow and ice, like mushy snow,
Okay. Like,
and then hold it. And then it worked out okay because it was like what it looks like around the horn at the base. So
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say that you have to add pieces. The horn would have been really hard to carve separate or into all in one piece. It would have been hard to
plus
carve.
it has to be exactly the same on both sides. So we had to make them separate and then stick them. And then two of us were in the bobcat, and then one was at the bottom checking that it was level and everything. And we had to do the same with the tail. We had to carve the tail separately, and I wanted the tail up, but we couldn't do it because it was too warm. So we had to go like
So
this.
you don't put a wire structure in it when you want to
Oh,
use.
no. There's no. You can't leave anything. No.
Okay.
It was in a plywood form but when we start the competition, they take them off. So you just have a big block.
Yeah. No, I meant to keep the horn structure or tail
Oh,
structure.
no. You're
Everything
not allowed to use anything else than
other
snow.
than snow.
No,
Yeah.
you're disqualified if you put anything.
Oh,
And
for sure.
sometimes teams have to leave something, otherwise it collapses and then you're disqualified. Or if it's it's just nothing but snow, nothing but ice, and nothing but sand.
Oh, okay.
No colors, no nothing,
Just what it
no
is.
supports, no nothing. Yeah.
Just the oil that's in the snow. You have to deal with.
Well, unfortunately that one time, yeah, but not the other time. So this one was like pure white. This
Yeah.
was in China. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
So,
a Haida theme of the salmon moon.
mhm.
But in that particular competition, there were only two of us because I couldn't find anybody else to come with me, and then because the flight was not paid for, so all the other teams had four people except us, and then my teammate got sick the first 2 days, so I basically carved it by myself, and then he came on the last day, so I didn't add as many salmon as I wanted around the sculpture,
Mhm.
but it worked out okay. So, and
Yeah.
it was beautiful and white. So
Yeah, beautiful. No, I can
yeah,
see some of the other things that are in the background, the size and
yes,
scale of
yeah,
things that are going on.
yeah.
No,
And
the
this one
story
was
just
also 4.5 meters high. So
so it also has a nice story. It looks like a nice story
yeah,
to it. Like
yeah. Well, I always have a little write up with the sketch and
right,
explaining what it means and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, and then they translate it into Chinese so people know what it is.
right. So how many competitions have you been at? About 100 and over 100?
Over 120 and more coming. So yeah.
That that's a grueling um
Oh, some people do it full time. I don't do it full time.
yeah,
So a lot of my carver friends uh, do it for a living. So they go from one festival to another commercial project. They do competitions. They do it all year round. So
right.
some do sand, ice, snow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when COVID started, I just finished a competition in the World Championship in Fairbanks, Alaska, ice art, and I came back to Saskatoon on the 23rd of February, and that's when everybody started, like everything started happening. So
Right.
I that was my last international competition before the pandemic. So during the pandemic, I was really desperate because I really wanted to carve. So I did a lot of sculptures by myself.
Yeah.
This one, for example, is in front of some friend's house in the countryside, about 15 minutes from Saskatoon.
Yeah.
They had so much snow. I said, "Well, can I come and carve?" So they wouldn't let me in to use the bathroom because of COVID, but
Oh
I
dear.
went and peed in the bushes, and then carved my polar bear mom and two cubs
Yeah.
one climbing on her back, and then on a piece of ice floe.
Yeah.
And then on the last day, I remember it was -36 and there was this huge windstorm. So I had finished the mother bear's face and everything, and then it was all pitted and full of holes the next morning when I went back. So I had to fix it. And but my friends were super happy, and then they put some blue lights at the bottom, so at night it looked really nice.
Yeah, no, it's nice that you could be. It was nice that you're able to do that during the. I mean, a lot of artists went through a lot of troubled times.
Well, that's why I called it bear hug, because you couldn't hug anyone. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no, I think there's still people that are pumping, doing elbow.
yeah, I know. But
Well, it's still around, but I think we're
and
over.
then what I realized is that I packed the snow myself in my plastic forms. I brought everything in my truck, and then I carved, and I only carved. It only took me 14 hours by myself from start to finish.
Yeah.
So
So
I can work really fast by myself. I found out, because
so
when you're on the team, you spend a lot of time talking and discussing this and arguing, and it depends, because I never really go with the same people all the time. So it depends who's available and where the competition is and so on. So it's a lot of, like when you work on a team, you always have to, talk and stuff. So
yeah,
yeah.
well, that's part of being part of the team. It's a little social, but it's also
Well, it's not that simple,
planning
sometimes.
things out a little bit. I think making it well, it's something that you're all involved in. I'm not really
Yeah.
good at collaborative pieces myself. I kind of
Well, I know, but then for these events now, I go with other professional sculptors, so in the old days when I would ask just anyone who could come, not necessarily with any experience, and they would do all the shoveling and I would do all the carving. So this is a bit different. At international events now, they allow countries to mix sculptors. So you can have, like, I've carved with a lot of Russians, Dutch people,
yeah,
Canadians, Americans, and so on. So
no,
and Chinese even.
yeah, no,
So then there's a language barrier, because I speak several languages, but I'm not fluent in Mandarin. So it was quite,
I
it
can
was quite
I
the
can only imagine.
experience.
So working like as an artist myself, I have a studio and I work in a warm environment and I can paint and draw and do things. No real coats on. You're working in the snowsuits and mitts and big bulky.
Well, just snow pants and
Yeah.
but you put layers on top, because you shovel so much, you work with
Oh,
your
okay.
arms so much that you just sweat a lot.
Yeah.
So you just keep taking layers off. I know, it's like it's a workout. Like
It it is a workout, and
yeah,
I just
you
feel
don't move your legs too much, just climbing, a little bit, but and then you need warm boots. That's
really
because
warm boots.
I
Yeah.
know, because one year I got frostbite. I bought a new pair of boots before going to Harbin, and they weren't Sorels, and I lost two toenails. And
Oh, dear.
after a few hours, my feet were so sore, and
Yeah.
I didn't understand why. And then after a week, they were all swollen and red, and it was horrible.
Yeah.
So warm boots, warm socks, everything.
So this shows the forms that you were talking about,
Yeah,
right?
the plastic forms. Yeah, exactly. So
I can see
sometimes
how
it kind of warps a little bit, but
you
it doesn't really matter, because
carve it anyway.
the sculpture will be inside the form. So yeah.
You can see
So
the
you always pack more than you need.
yeah. You
That's
can
the
see
thing.
the
You
C clamp.
remove. Yeah.
The C clamp is holding it there. You can see
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
overlap, and people can say, yeah, if you can find
Yeah.
anything like that, you can build the layers up, and I can.
Yeah. Exactly. And then the plastic is very light, and it's super easy to remove, because if it's plywood forms, it's nails. So you have to pull the nails out, then you have to carry them. So this I can do by myself, no problem. I just needed help from the city of North Battleford. Some of the workers came and with 2 truckloads of snow, or 3, I forget,
Yeah.
and then they helped me shovel and temper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is in front of the Allen Sapp Gallery in North
Yeah.
Battleford.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's just my little snow shovel there, my scoop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's what the
And my tools are in my little plastic, my milk crate. I use those to stand on too. Yeah.
those
The
orange
yellow ones.
little
Yeah.
ones on the right there.
Yeah.
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 So this is the finished piece.
Yeah, and that only took same thing, 12, 13 hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's
it
still
wasn't that
still a
cold.
long time. It's still a long time. I think the weather was a little better then, was it not? Was it not as
Minus 25.
well,
but
that's still cold
it-
enough?
yeah, and I have to make sure I position the sculpture so it doesn't get wrecked by the sun at noon.
I
So
was
the
thinking,
sun was shining to the back, so the front was not damaged.
yeah,
And then I made the back more abstract because I knew it would start to melt.
yeah. And people
So
need
I
to
always
think,
position the sculpture according to where the sun hits at noon.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, people need to think of that if they're going to do this. Is what part will melt
Well,
first?
especially for snow. Yeah. And ice too, because in ice, if you don't protect the ice before you finished, the sun hits it, it starts cracking inside the ice, and it becomes opaque inside, and you
Oh,
lose all the transparency. So you have to use tarps, sometimes survival blankets, like we did in France, because there's a warm sun that hits the sculptures in French Alps. It's called the Fun, but it wasn't fun at all. And my first time, I uncovered the sculpture to go for lunch when the judging was happening. I came back and it was all white, like totally white. So
oh, that's
after that, you
frustrating.
cover it, and then you wait till the last minute. Yeah,
Yeah. So here's
just
more of a front
and
view.
then you have to leave us some support too because it's a lot of weight. So I put like a hoof in the front
Mhm.
between the two front legs, like the buffalo was just coming out of the ground.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like he's climbing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a lot of architecture required, like really planning the structure so that it's going to last as long
Ooh,
as it can, but also be
yes.
integral. Like it
It's
belongs.
math, it's engineering, and it's art, and it's also sport because you have to
Right.
shovel a lot. Yeah.
How were the people following you on this one in town? Did they keep coming
Oh
by?
yeah, people came every day. Yeah, and actually, that one on the very last day, there was a big car accident right at the intersection. Like
Did you
there was
cause
a
that? Did you cause
no, some old guy lost control, and I heard the bang, and there was a nice couple from Prince Albert, a Cree couple. We were chatting, and all of a sudden, this car just went almost hit their truck and just crashed like right behind the sculpture, like where the tree is.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, like, and and then, yeah,
Uh,
it's one of the worst intersections apparently in North Waterford. So
yeah.
it
Well,
caused a bit of commotion.
the road turns dramatically, right? 90 degrees almost, and that
Well, the car could have ended up right in the sculpture.
they could
Yeah.
have.
No, it's totally unexpected, but
Yeah.
yeah. And
Well,
the guy was okay, but
yeah.
he hit a car, and the poor woman was she came out of the car. She was like the car spun around and went like, and then she came out. She's like, "What happened?" You know, it's like crazy. Oh, that's on my deck. Yeah.
So is
So
this is during COVID or just post-COVID?
2022. I can't
Must have
even
been
remember
nearing the
now.
end.
But I had so much snow on my deck. I started making a Christmas tree,
Yeah.
and so I finished the Christmas tree, and then we had more snow. We had another blizzard or two or something. So I thought, okay, I'm going to repurpose the tree, and then I just piled the snow just as high as
Right.
I could, and then I made a polar bear mom and triplets,
Ah.
and then the one in the back is just hanging on his mom's butt. So
Mhm.
the kids in the neighborhood, they really like that. So they would come, and I said, "You just walk around. You don't touch. You just walk around." And they were like, "Oh, look, the little one in the back." Mm.
I think kids really do like that. They can relate to a lot of things that a lot of adults they go yes, yes, and they don't
Oh,
spend
I
the
know.
time
Yeah,
that kids spend a lot more time
yeah.
on things like that. It's a little bit more magical to them.
Oh,
And
of course. Well, that I feel the same magic as well when I'm doing it. You
yeah,
know.
well,
Yeah.
I think part of it is scale, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
they're large, like they're small, like kids generally are smaller, but these animals are almost their size, like some of
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
where an
Well, it's
animal,
on my deck, so I had to.
yeah.
I couldn't do much bigger. That's
No,
almost the
well,
whole
yeah,
length of my deck. Yeah.
it's nice that you can use your snow up that way.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Well, and it stayed all winter. Oh, and this one was I can't even
ice
remember.
blocks.
2 winters ago.
Okay.
Um,
Where was this?
in Saskatoon.
Okay.
There's the Broadway Bridge right behind,
Right.
and there was the festival, the winter festival.
Winter Festival. Yeah.
I forget what it's called
Is
now.
that like
Anyway,
February or something? That's something
yeah,
like
yeah.
February.
But what happened is that the local ice maker, the guy who makes blocks of ice, was not able to do it, so they had to order a truckload of ice from Ontario,
Oh dear.
and they ended up with 60 extra blocks because it was 160 blocks total, and then there were two other. One guy from Regina and one guy from Saskatoon just doing a slide and then some
Okay.
logo stuff for the sponsors.
Yeah.
So they ended up with 60 extra blocks. So I was supposed to do a snow sculpture for that one. And then I ended up doing an ice sculpture with 52 blocks, and then the snow sculpture afterwards. So I asked the organizer if I could call this friend of mine I'd never worked with before. She's a chainsaw carver from Irvine, Alberta, Marina Cole, and she was free, so she came. And she had never carved a giant piece of like a giant ice sculpture before. And I said, well, we're going to make a wall, like a curved wall, and we're going to make it Northern Lights, and just draw like the curtains of ice, the curtains of light into the ice.
Okay.
But the blocks are only 20. They're okay. This one was 9 feet long. No, 9 feet long. No,
It's
wait a minute.
longer than
I
9
always no. I always get confused with feet and meters. It was
3 meters.
9 meters long. 9 meters long, 30 feet,
Yeah.
and 3 meters high, and but only 25 centimeters thick. So we had two walls, kind of corners, to make it kind of like a bit of a wave, not like flat. And then we just went on scaffolding and I drew all the curtains and stuff. So
Okay.
first we had to spend 2 days stacking the ice with two other guys.
Right.
No, three other guys. One driving the bobcat, lifting, and then three of us placing the blocks and leveling and squirting water to fuse. So
Right.
it's a lot of work.
Construction. It's a lot of
Yeah.
construction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
If you don't have the base, it'll get ruined. You need to have the base. It's the
Well,
only. Yeah. You got to spend your
yeah.
time doing the bottom part so you
Well,
can
it
work.
has to be solid, like not solid, but well, solid too, but
Sturdy.
leveled, so it
Yeah.
doesn't, if anything, if the weather had been a bit warmer, which it did actually, because the top got a bit, you can see all the ice being all weird at the top of the blocks. That was from the sun.
It's melting.
So then we had to cover it with a giant tarp. You can see some orange stuff. That was the tarp. We had to cover it every night.
Yeah.
And then sometimes the tarp stuck to the ice and we had to scrape it. And it was, yeah.
The sun is actually quite warm. Once you
Oh,
move it
yeah.
later
Yeah.
to January into February, especially if it's a clear sky and.
But it was beautiful at night. When the sun went down, it
Yeah.
looked like gold. So this is from the back where you can see these
Beautiful.
waves.
Yeah.
And it was about 6 o'clock and it was like magical. It wasn't totally finished because you can still see the scaffolding, but it was like, wow, it looked like gold. It was beautiful. And I ended up doing some paintings of close-ups of the sculpture afterwards.
Yeah,
because
I
they
didn't
put
know.
lights in the back. I wanted dancing lights, but moving lights, but they couldn't do it. It was too expensive, so they just put 3 different colors, and then it was
They've
all
got those Christmas lights now that do that dancing. It's just a little LED thing. I think you can create
well, no, I have some of those, but you
not the
wanted
same
something that could stand the cold, and
okay.
yeah, so they had to
Yeah.
set up some colored lights in the back, but it worked out okay, and the photos turned out, yeah. So that's us when we finished in the daytime, and we ended up spending what was it, 4 days, the two of us, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it
So
was a lot of work because even Marina, she's used to carving wood, and she was complaining about back pain after the first day, and I said, "Well, welcome to the club."
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's they're
Oh, that's it with the lights there.
this is the lights. People can see this one now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. I mean, when you can take an element like ice and the clarity that it can have, and you can build structures from it.
Yeah.
It
Well,
is
I always wanted to make Northern Lights, so this was like perfect. I was so happy, even though it was a lot of work and totally unexpected because I was supposed to do a snow sculpture, and then I ended up doing this big thing, and then I had to finish the snow sculpture real fast in 2 days
still
because
the snow sculpture.
the festival was starting, so it was opening. So yeah, so
But
but
opportunities happen, and when 60
yeah,
blocks of ice show up,
I
it's
know,
called opportunity. It doesn't
yeah,
happen every day that you can have
I
that,
know,
and good on you that you're able to
because ice
squeeze
is expensive. Those blocks, they're really expensive,
right.
So
Understanding it's not just ice; it's a clear, pure water that makes that ice block.
yeah,
Yeah,
those are called Klein Bell blocks. They're
oh,
made with a special machine called the Klein Bell.
mhm,
So each block is 300 pounds, so
yeah.
150 kilos.
But the
So it's
clarity in the water is going to be a pure water, can have impurities in it. When
yeah,
they make the way they make the ice block,
yeah,
and
yeah. And it takes 3 days for the water level to rise and freeze.
it doesn't.
So that's why it's clear. Yeah,
It's a slow process in doing that.
yeah.
Here's
Oh, and
another.
that was my snow sculpture. I had used my plastic forms for the top, and then I asked them to make a base so I could stand on it.
Okay.
And yeah,
So
so
this one
I
you have a chainsaw on this one, a little one sometimes.
oh, that was yeah. This one I had to do it in 2 days, so I used my little chainsaw that I won in France when I won the snow sculpture competition. We each won a
Yeah. So
chainsaw
do they give
steel
you
with a battery.
do they give you honorariums a little bit in some of the competitions that you work in?
No,
No.
well, it depends. The one in France, they it pays for most of the airfare.
Okay.
They give you, can't remember now, 900 euros. You get 450 euros for the trip per sculpture, and then you get 450 euros for making the sculpture. So 900 euros,
Yeah. So
providing the sculpture doesn't uh, collapse. So it has to be finished.
it has to be finished. So
Yeah.
you don't usually apply for grants or for funding from
Well, I did once, but it's just not very,
the
it's
painful
time
process.
consuming and not really worth it. I did that one time when I did Salmon Moon in China. I got a grant from the Saskatchewan Arts Board, but it was just enough to buy 2 plane tickets, and that was it. And then we end up spending 2 weeks in China because we did the snow sculpture and then we did an ice carving too. So it's.
Yeah. No,
And
it's
then you have to write a report, and then you have to submit pictures and this and that. It's not worth it. Plus, every time I wanted to have a grant from the Canada Arts Board, I had to submit photos of other sculptures that were not made of ephemeral mediums because they don't recognize that as art. If it's snow,
really
sand, or ice, yeah,
wow.
it's
You have to
not
change that.
considered art. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I gave up on that years ago, and
It's a struggle. This is a
I
beautiful.
only got that grant when it was I don't know. Oh no, it wasn't even the Saskatchewan board. It was the French Francophone Artists Association or something, because it was a special grant for French artists or something.
Yeah.
I can't
This,
remember.
this is the front of the snowy owl that you.
Yeah, and then on the back, all the way around it, I had 4 walls of snow, and I gave workshops.
Mhm.
So people carved in bas relief on each side of the walls,
Yeah.
and they made animals, the Canadian animals. So I had photocopies of different animals like wolves and
Yeah.
bison and deer,
Do
elk.
they draw, so do they
goats, and
draw
goats.
on the snow with a marker of some kind?
Yeah,
Or
big marker. Yeah, I would just do the marking, and then I would show them how to
carve it?
use the tools. Oh yeah, I have some of the tools. Like that's my favorite one for snow sculpting.
Oh,
For
nice.
roughing out. It's from Harbin, and then I have 2 other ones.
There we go, Steve.
This
Thanks.
has some teeth, so it's for like shaping,
Yeah,
and this one is flat. Yeah, and these are also from China. Yeah,
right.
because
Can
they're
you
a
show,
lot
can you
cheaper in China.
show the first one again that you had there?
Oh yeah, that's my big one. Yeah,
It's your big one there.
big teeth.
Wow.
Yeah, and I just have to sharpen. I have a sharpening stone and everything. So,
Yeah.
and it's got a handle that doesn't freeze because it's
Idea.
soft. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's what I use for ice. Some of the chisels I use for ice and snow, and then for sand, I use little flexible blades. So this is like a cake knife.
Okay.
That's for details.
So you
And
spat.
then this is for bigger, like a trowel.
Hmm.
And this one is my favorite, and you'll see why, because it's all rounded.
Right.
Used to be square. Oh
Yeah,
man, rectangular.
Sand
So
does
this
make
is
you-
a Marshall trowel, and number 54. So Marshalltown. So these
Wow.
are the best. Like,
Yeah.
and
Nice.
I've been using these for over 30 years.
Yeah.
And I put Team Canada or my name on it.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if
nobody
that would
steals
help.
them because
They collect them if you put your
oh,
name.
and I also use this. It's for
Oh, yeah.
snow and sand. It's for brushing horses.
Right.
So that's like if you want to make nice curves and dips and stuff. So
Right.
it works both for snow and sand.
Tools
And
are.
then you need brushes, of course. And
Yeah.
oh, and I didn't bring the sandpaper for the snow. But
That's fine. Well, that was great. I mean, it brought me up to speed a little bit on the kind of sculpture you do. I mean, I
yeah,
think I've seen all kinds of things, and this, people can look at this. We're in the middle of winter here right now, so it's like, they can
it's
go.
perfect. Yeah.
Perfect.
And also, when people see a picture of a snow sculpture, they all think it's marble, white marble.
Right, because it's been
And
polished.
they go, oh, it's small,
Yeah.
And I go, oh no, it's 3.5 meters high, or it's 4.5. And they go, what? Like, how did you do this? And yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, so that's why competition and why I really enjoy the competition aspect, because people see us work and actually carve,
Right. Yeah.
and they really appreciate all the hard work that goes into it. Yeah. So.
Well, that's great. Well, there he is. He's coming back.
Yeah, I know. Killjoy's here. That was really cool. I liked it. I'm like, I wish it snowed where I live. I would have her come and like that would be a
There you
full-time
go.
job in the wintertime. I'd be like, keep going, don't stop.
Where
That was
do you
great.
live?
Well, I'm sitting in Austin, Texas right now, so there's
Oh,
no snow. And then when I lived in Miami, there was snow, but it was a
well,
different type of snow, so you can't carve that snow. So
I've been to South Padre Island a few times to carve sand,
yeah,
and
we
then
have none of that here.
they
We have
say they have what they call the Texas. How do you make a Texas snowball? So it's
no
like a
clue.
ball of sand.
Yeah, yeah,
You use wet sand, and you
right,
drain the water, and then you roll it in dry sand, and you have
right.
perfect balls. So you can make snowmen in sand. So I did some in St. Lucia last
Very
week, and I
nice.
showed some kids how to do it, and then they were like, "Whoa!" And then we made Christmas trees with the drip method, where
All
you take
right.
like really wet sand, and you go, and then you can make like little trees.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you
Oh,
go.
next holiday I'm going. I'm taking her. We're gonna go to a beach somewhere. Like, yeah, make snowmans on the beach. Let's trip out let's trip out the locals. This will be great.
I made sand sculptures every day in St. Lucia
Okay.
when I was there. Yeah, so
All
it
right,
was
everybody
fun.
in the Cayman Islands, we're gonna have snowmen on the beach. You're all gonna think you're
Yeah.
drunk. This will
Yeah.
be great. So, all right, very cool. Patricia, it was a
Okay.
pleasure. I will tell you, I watched the competition like on ESPN 2200.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
very interesting, but this was better. ESPN
Okay.
should have
Thank
you
you.
come as a commentator and actually teach them about how this is done because it was
Okay.
fascinating.
Thank
So
you.
it was very, very cool. Thank you.
You're
And to
welcome.
both of you, Happy New Year and thank you for
And
being our
Year.
have a
first show
great
of
2025.
2025. Yeah, 2025. So you
Okay.
are our first guest of 2025. So
Okay.
welcome to 2025. So there
Have
you
a
go.
great- yeah, have a great year ahead, and we look forward to another good season. This will be our third season. So
There you
Okay.
go. All right, everybody. Don't
I'll be
forget to
carving more this
and we
winter.
want to see you come back next year and do
Okay.
more.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
everybody, don't forget to subscribe and like. And if you want to reach out to Patricia, her links will be below. So whether you live where it's warm or cold, apparently, she can come and make you whatever you want. And she'll play the theme from Frozen. Do you want to make a snowman all day long for you, just so you can make a snowman in the sand? So that's the
Okay.
only reason I'm doing it.
Okay.
All right, everybody, have a good one. Cheers.
Good one. Take care.